The man, the myth, the streak, The Undertaker. From 1991 to 2013, The Undertaker went undefeated. 21 wins, 0 losses. No one even came close to him. Shawn Michaels tried twice, failed. Triple H tried 3 times, failed. Edge, Batista, Randy Orton, CM Punk, they all tried but miserably failed. The streak became bigger than any title and definitely bigger than any storyline. But how did it happen? And what eventually caused it to end? Well, to find out, I'm starting from the beginning. Before the caskets, before the smoke, there was Mark Calloway, a Texas big man with red hair and MMA dreams. Born in Houston, Texas, on March 24, 1965, he was the youngest of 5 tough, competitive brothers. Mark excelled in sports from a young age. At Waltrip High School, he was a star athlete, playing basketball and football with intensity and precision. After high school, Calloway got into Angelina College on a basketball scholarship, but as college wore on, something changed. The traditional path didn't feel right to him, because Mark was built for something less ordinary, something bigger and more brutal. And that he did. He jumped straight into wrestling. At first, The Undertaker wrestled in WCW under the name Mean Mark Callis. He was okayish and didn't stand out. There was no mystery, no charisma. Just a tall guy trying to make it in the business. He was even told outright by bookers, "You'll never draw a dime." But he madly believed in himself. Brick by brick, he started building himself. So when Vince McMahon signed him in 1990 and pitched the idea of a wrestling mortician, it sounded like career suicide. But Mark was a genius. He didn't just wear the gimmick, he became it. And from here started the unbeatable streak of bells, dim lights, fog, and a man in leather. But the real question is, how did this winning streak even start? Well, it started quietly. No big announcement, no fanfare, just a regular match on a big stage. WrestleMania 7, March 1991. The Undertaker was still new to WWE. People didn't know what to make of him yet. He was tall, quiet, moved slowly, and had a spooky presence. He wore dark clothes, barely showed emotion, and walked the ring like he had all the time in the world. His opponent that night was Jimmy Superfly Snuka. The match wasn't long. It was never meant to be. It was just a way to show people how powerful this new guy was. The Undertaker hit his finisher, the Tombstone Piledriver, folded Snuka's arms across his chest, and pinned him. One, and that was it. The Undertaker had won his first WrestleMania match. Nobody thought much of it at the time, but that was the beginning. That win, without anyone realizing, was the start of something huge. Year after year, The Undertaker kept winning at WrestleMania. It just kept happening. He beat Jake the Snake Roberts. He beat big guys like King Kong Bundy and Diesel. He even beat his own storyline brother, Kane. Some matches were better than others, but the result was always the same. The Undertaker won. But back then, there wasn't a big deal made about it. No one said the word streak. It just kept happening because The Undertaker was a big deal in WWE and they wanted to keep him looking strong. At first, nobody really noticed. It was just something happening quietly in the background. But behind the scenes, Michael Hayes kept pointing out, "Hey, you know he's never lost at WrestleMania, right?" And he was absolutely right. But people aren't that trivial. Finally, in WrestleMania 18, The Undertaker beat Ric Flair, and after the match, he held up 10 fingers. It didn't seem like a big deal, just a small moment. But fans picked up on it. That's when people started to pay attention. The streak was gaining momentum, but it still wasn't something abnormally huge. Not until 2005, WrestleMania 21. That's when Randy Orton stepped in. He was calling himself the Legend Killer. And he didn't want a championship. He didn't want to settle a score. He just wanted to be the guy who ended The Undertaker's undefeated run. That changed everything. For the first time, the match was about something bigger, the streak. The Undertaker beat Orton, 13-0. And from then on, the streak became part of the show, raising one big question every year. Was this the year someone would finally beat him? More and more wrestlers tried. Mark Henry gave it a shot in a casket match. No luck. Batista pushed him hard. Great match. Still lost. Edge faced him in the main event. Almost had him, but nope. Somehow the Undertaker always found a way. And then came Shawn Michaels. Their match at WrestleMania 25 is still talked about as one of the best ever. Not just in WWE, but in all of wrestling. It had everything. Drama, suspense, emotion. Michaels wore all white. Undertaker, of course, wore black. It felt like light versus darkness. The crowd was hooked from the first bell. Every near fall, every reversal, every moment built to something bigger. In the end, The Undertaker won. The next year, Michaels came back and asked for a rematch. Poor guy was ready to get insulted again. But this time, it was personal because Michaels made it clear. If he lost, his career was over. They pushed each other to the limit again. And in the end, The Undertaker beat him a second time. Michaels was done, and the streak lived on. After that, Michaels' best friend Triple H stepped in. He wanted to finish what Shawn couldn't.
So I came out first. People are going nuts, right? Undertaker's back, Undertaker's back. And when I got to the ring, before I could say anything, Triple H's music hits. And he'd been nursing an injury, so he had been off TV for months. And now they're they like, what? Because we got two comebacks at one point, and he comes to the ring, and we did the old, we did an old stare down. We never said a word to each other. Not one word on the mic. We stared at each other, and then we looked up at the sign, and then the place erupted because they understood, like, oh, Triple H and Undertaker going at WrestleMania. Wow. And we never said a word.
Their match at WrestleMania 27 was violent and intense. Chairs, sledgehammers, steel steps, nothing was off limits. The Undertaker won, but it was the first time he didn't walk out. He had to be carried away. He had won, but it had clearly taken a lot out of him. And we'll talk about this in a few minutes, in absolute detail. A year later, the two met again. This time inside Hell in a Cell, with Shawn Michaels as the guest referee. The match was called End of an Era, and it felt like it. 3 legends in one ring. One last war. One last show. But The Undertaker won again. All 3 men stood on the top of the ramp together afterward, arms around each other, taking it all in. It felt like goodbye, but The Undertaker kept going. At WrestleMania 29, he faced CM Punk. That story got real. Paul Bearer, The Undertaker's longtime manager and part of his spooky character, had passed away just weeks before. Punk used that in the storyline, mocking the loss. It was risky and controversial, but it made the match feel even more emotional. And of course, The Undertaker won again. That made it 21-0. By that point, the streak had become something you couldn't touch. More important than a championship, more special than any trophy. It was sacred. For over 2 decades, no one could beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania. Fans didn't just expect him to win, they believed in it. Like a tradition. But why did it always feel like The Undertaker couldn't lose? Well, for starters, it wasn't just about wins and losses. It was about aura. From day one, The Undertaker wasn't booked like a normal wrestler. He wasn't loud. He didn't beg for attention. He didn't scream in pain. The character was built to be unbreakable. And behind the character was a real man who was just as tough. Mark Calaway trained hard. He fought through injuries, finished matches with broken bones, and rarely took time off. In the locker room, everyone knew. You didn't mess with Taker. But there was something more. The truth is, The Undertaker could lose, but it never felt like he would. And that's why fans called him the WWE star who physically couldn't lose. But then came WrestleMania 30. April 6th, 2014, New Orleans. His opponent was Brock Lesnar, a former UFC champion, a monster. Still, absolutely nobody thought The Undertaker would lose. The streak felt too important, too solid. Even if the match was tough, people figured he'd find a way to win. He always did. But early in the match, The Undertaker got hurt. A concussion. He kept wrestling, but it was clear something was off. He moved slower, missed a few steps, He didn't look like the same man we'd seen before. But still, fans waited for the ending they expected. Then came the third F5. Lesnar pinned him. The ref counted 1, 2, 3. Silence. Not a single sound in the arena. Fans were frozen, confused. Some had their hands over their mouths, others just stared at the screen. Everyone was waiting for the twist. Maybe the ref made a mistake, maybe it was a fake ending. Then the number popped up on the big screen, 21 in 1. And that was it. The streak was over. Backstage, many wrestlers were just as shocked as the crowd. A lot of people didn't even know it was going to happen. Vince McMahon, the WWE boss, made the call that day. He wanted something surprising. He wanted to rebuild Brock Lesnar as an unstoppable force. The Undertaker agreed, but later said he wasn't sure Lesnar was the right guy. Maybe it should have gone to a younger wrestler, someone who needed the moment. But the streak was gone, just like that. And even though The Undertaker wrestled more times after that, something had changed. The streak had been the heartbeat of WrestleMania for years, and now it was just a memory. Still, what it meant and what it became stays with us. No one will do that again. Not with that kind of mystique. Not with that kind of build. It was something rare, something honest. For over 30 years, The Undertaker stood as one of the most enduring and iconic figures in professional wrestling. Mark Calaway is a man who gave his body, mind, and soul to the business. But all this success came at a heavy price: the injuries. When The Undertaker debuted in WWE in 1990, it didn't take long for the audience to be drawn in. He became the Phenom, the undead mortician who couldn't be stopped. And for years, it seemed true. No matter how hard the match or how dangerous the opponent, he kept coming back. But in reality, he was hurting, more than most people ever knew. His first major injury came in 1994. Back problems. The kind that makes simple movement painful, let alone throwing yourself around a wrestling ring. He had to take time off, and WWE turned his absence into a storyline, saying he'd been taken out in a casket match and would return from the dead. When he did return, it was at SummerSlam, where he fought a fake version of himself. It made for good TV, but the truth was, Mark Calaway had been dealing with pain that would follow him for the rest of his career. In 1995, things got even worse. A botched move shattered the bone around one of his eyes, and doctors clearly told him 90% of the orbital floor was gone.
I had an injury. I was in Springfield, Massachusetts. I was wrestling a guy by the name of Mabel. He was my height, which is about 6'8", 6'9", but he was like 500 pounds.
Yeah.
And he was just grossly out of shape. His cardio was horrible.
Yeah.
And so, and that's usually, a lot of the times, that's how injuries occur, when somebody's doesn't have their cardio and can't keep up in a match. And this is exactly what happened. We're in the match and I'm flying around, and he was supposed to be someplace and
didn't get
wasn't.
there in time? Right.
So he tried to compensate, and instead of hitting me, with this part of his arm, he lunged, and I'm coming off of the ropes, full steam,
yeah,
and basically run right straight into a big punch.
His optic nerve was exposed, and in a time like this, most people would take time off. But he put on a protective mask and kept going. But trust me, it wasn't just his face. In 1998, during the legendary Hell in a Cell match with Mick Foley, he fractured his ankle. The pain was real, but no one watching would have known. He didn't miss a beat, and I think that's what makes him The Undertaker. One of the more frightening moments of his career happened not in a match, but during an entrance. At the 2010 Elimination Chamber event, a pyrotechnics malfunction lit part of his coat on fire. He walked through it, kept walking, wrestled the entire match with visible burns on his chest and neck. He poured water on himself between moves just to keep cool, and the technician responsible was immediately let go. But The Undertaker, as usual, said nothing, just did the job. His hips were another story. Years of performing his signature leg drop off the ring apron had worn them down. He underwent surgery to try and extend his career, but eventually the damage was too great. After retirement, he had to get a full hip replacement because the pain had become constant and unavoidable. And lastly came WrestleMania 30, the night the streak ended. Fans were stunned, but what most didn't know at the time was that Mark had suffered a severe concussion early in the match. He didn't remember the match, he didn't remember the day, he only remembered waking up in a hospital, confused, asking what happened.
So I got concussed somewhere in the first 5, maybe 10 minutes of that match. I've watched it back. I can't pick it out.
Do you remember that match?
No. My last memory of that day happened around 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Doctors seriously warned him after that day. They said another concussion like that and he could be done for good. Over the years, there were more injuries: a torn pectoral, a sliced ear, countless concussions, chronic pain. He kept coming back over and over, not because he had to, but because it meant something to him, to finish what he had started, to give everything he had to the character, to the fans, and to the company he called home for 3 decades. The Undertaker's character may have been built on mystery and fear, but Mark Calloway's real story is about grit, sacrifice, and loyalty. He wasn't immortal, he wasn't unbreakable, but he was committed. Every step, every match, every fall. And that's what made him legendary. In 2022, The Undertaker was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Vince McMahon himself did the honors, because who else could? No man stayed loyal to the WWE longer. No man created more iconic moments. And no man protected his character the way Taker did. From the early 1990s to the social media era, he adapted, evolved, and endured. He wasn't just a part of wrestling history, he is wrestling history. As of today, he has his own podcast called 6 Feet Under with Mark Calloway. In it, he talks about his wrestling days, shares behind-the-scenes stories, and chats with different guests. It's a mix of personal memories, funny moments, and real talk about life in and out of the ring. The podcast gives fans a closer look at who he is beyond The Undertaker. New episodes come out every week, and as of early 2025, the show is still going strong. To 21 straight wins over some of the biggest names in wrestling, it became one of the most powerful and unforgettable runs in WWE history. He was more than just a wrestler, he was a presence, a force. And behind all that mystery was a man named Mark Calloway, who gave his whole life to this business. Through broken bones, burns, surgeries, and pain most of us couldn't imagine, he kept going. Not for fame, not for money, but because he loved it, and he respected the fans. When the streak ended, it felt like the end of something bigger than a match. It was the end of an era. But the memories and moments he gave us will live on forever. Thank you, Taker, for everything, and thank you for watching. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, and let us know your favorite Undertaker moment in the comments. Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories like this. Real, raw, and full of heart. See you in the next one, and until then, rest in peace.